Self-Transcendence. Imagine you're standing at the edge of a vast canyon, watching the sun disappear behind distant mountains. The last rays of light stretch across the rock face, painting everything in shades of gold and amber. As darkness settles, you feel something curious happen. The boundaries between where you end and the world begins seem to soften, blur, then quietly dissolve altogether. In this moment of stillness, you're confronted with one of the most beautiful paradoxes of human existence. To truly find yourself, you must somehow lose yourself entirely. How can the very act of letting go of who you think you are lead you closer to who you actually are? The Stoics understood this paradox deeply. They recognized that our attachment to our smaller selves, our roles, our possessions, our carefully constructed identities, often becomes the very prison that keeps us from experiencing the vastness of what we truly are. The harder we grip onto our sense of self, the more constrained and limited we become. Yet there's something counterintuitive here that makes the mind pause. If the goal is to transcend the self, who exactly is doing the transcending? If you dissolve completely, what remains to experience the transcendence? On one hand, you spend most of your life building and defending your identity. You collect experiences, achievements, relationships, and preferences like precious stones, arranging them into the mosaic you call me. This feels natural, necessary even. Your story gives you direction, purpose, a sense of continuity from one day to the next. On the other hand, the Stoics observed that this very construction of self often becomes a source of suffering. When you identify too closely with your roles, your successes, or your circumstances, you become vulnerable to every change, every loss, every moment when life doesn't align with your expectations. The tighter you hold onto who you think you are, the more fragile that identity becomes. Consider a river that flows toward the ocean. As it winds through valleys and forests, it maintains its distinct character, its particular speed, its unique collection of minerals, its individual path through the landscape. But as it approaches the sea, something profound happens. The river doesn't cease to exist when it meets the ocean. Instead, it becomes something infinitely larger than what it was before. You might find yourself in moments where this same transformation beckons. Perhaps it's during meditation, when your thoughts quiet to almost nothing. Maybe it's while watching stars on a clear night, when your problems seem suddenly small and distant. Or it could be in acts of genuine service, when you forget entirely about your own needs and concerns. The Stoics taught that wisdom lies in learning when to hold and when to release. There are times when a healthy sense of self serves you well, when you need boundaries, when you must make decisions, when you're called to stand for your principles. But there are also moments when the greatest gift you can give yourself is the willingness to step beyond the familiar walls of your identity. This isn't about eliminating the self through force or willpower. That would be like trying to stop being a river by building a dam. You'd only create pressure and eventual overflow. Instead, it's about developing the capacity to hold your identity lightly, like cupping water in your hands rather than grasping ice. Think about the people who seem most fully themselves, those who radiate a kind of natural authenticity and ease. Often, these individuals have learned the art of self-forgetting. They're so present with whatever is in front of them, so engaged with the moment, that their self-consciousness dissolves into pure awareness and response. The paradox deepens when you realize that this dissolution doesn't make you less, it makes you more. When you release your grip on your smaller story, you don't disappear, you expand. You begin to sense your connection to everything around you, the invisible threads that link your breath to the wind, your thoughts to the vast intelligence that moves through all things. Marcus Aurelius wrote about this as seeing yourself from the perspective of the cosmic order. From that vantage point, your individual concerns don't vanish, but they find their proper proportion within a much larger context. Your joys and sorrows, your victories and defeats, your entire human drama, all of it becomes part of a grander symphony in which you're both a unique instrument and an expression of the whole composition. This perspective offers a curious comfort. When you realize that your deepest identity extends far beyond your personal biography, many of your daily anxieties begin to lose their grip. The promotion you didn't get, the relationship that ended, the mistake you made last week. These remain part of your experience, but they no longer define the totality of who you are. What emerges is a sense of intimate connection with existence itself. You start to feel less like an isolated individual struggling against the world and more like a temporary expression of something vast and interconnected. Your breath becomes the same breath that moves through trees and clouds. Your awareness reveals itself as part of the same consciousness that looks out through every pair of eyes. The Stoics called this the view from above, the capacity to zoom out from your immediate circumstances and see your life from a broader perspective. But they understood this wasn't meant to diminish your humanity. Rather, it was meant to reveal the true scope of what being human actually encompasses. In your quieter moments, you might sense this larger identity stirring. It doesn't announce itself with fanfare or dramatic revelation. Instead, it whispers in the spaces between thoughts, in the pause between heartbeats, in the moment of recognition when you see yourself reflected in another person's eyes. This is why self-transcendence often feels like coming home rather than going somewhere new. You're not becoming something foreign to your nature. You're remembering what you've always been beneath the layers of conditioning and story. You're like a wave, suddenly recognizing that it was never separate from the ocean that gave it form. The invitation isn't to abandon your human experience, but to hold it within a larger embrace. Your personality, your relationships, your daily responsibilities, all of these continue to matter. But they matter now as expressions of something deeper rather than as the final word on who you are. Tonight, as you settle into rest, you might allow yourself to experiment with this kind of expansion. Notice how your sense of boundary between inner and outer can soften. Feel how your breath connects you to the vast circulation of air around the planet. Sense how your thoughts arise from and dissolve back into an infinite field of awareness. It's not about solving the paradox of how losing yourself helps you find yourself. It's about resting in the mystery of it, allowing yourself to be both the wave and the ocean, both the individual note and the endless song.